You had mentioned, Rabbi Jacobson, the Baal HaTanya. Who was the Baal HaTanya, very briefly? What was unique about, if we can call this, his brand of Hasidism? We generally associate Chabad, Lubavitcher today as a global movement, a movement that goes beyond its own group. Is that how it started? And was that a tradition that was passed on from the Baal HaTanya?
Great question. Okay. The Baal HaTanya was born in the year 1745 in Belarus. They called it White Russia, a place called Lyozhna. He was born the same day like the Baal Shem Tov. A few decades later, Baal Shem Tov was born 1698. The Baal HaTanya was born 1745, a half a century later, but the same day, the 18th of Elul, Chai Elul. And he grew up, his father's name was Rebbe. He went to the Baal Shem Tov once in his life for his upshernish. When he was 3 years old, his father took him to the Baal Shem Tov, and the Baal Shem Tov cut his hair. But then he grew up in Lyozhna. He was a child prodigy par excellence. His mind was something out of the ordinary. When he was a young man, he wanted to go learn from a teacher. And he had a choice to go to Vilna or to Mizrich. Vilna was the home of the Gaon of Vilna. Mizrich was the home of the Maggid of Mizrich, the successor of the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal HaTanya said, and I heard that in Vilna, they teach you how to learn. In Mizrich, they teach you how to pray. Learning, I know a little bit how to learn, but prayer, I know nothing. And he went to Mizrich and he became one of the greatest students of the Maggid of Mizrich. When the Maggid of Mizrich passed away in 1772, there was no one successor. The Hasidic movement branched out into many, many leaders, and each one went to his or her own shtetl or community and city and became a father figure of the Hasidic movement in his shtetl or his city. Like Rebbe Melech of Lezhensk, right, becomes the father of one of the great leaders of the Polish Hasidic movement, the Seer of Lublin, right? The Alter Rebbe goes back to Belarus from the Ukraine. He goes back to Belarus. He lives in Lyozhna for many, many, many years. He becomes the Maggid of Lyozhna, the teacher, rabbi, preacher of Lyozhna. And over the years, he develops a unique brand of Chassidus called Chabad Chassidus. Chabad is an acronym of Chachma Bina Das, which means wisdom, understanding, knowledge, or more accurately, conception, comprehension, and application. What does it do? Its main focus is to systemize the ideas of Chassidus into a comprehensive program for life. Meaning most of the Hasidic masters, the way they taught was first and foremost through example, through living example, the way they prayed, the way they studied, the way they lived. And they would also give gems. They would throw out, I would say, nuclear sparks of wisdom that were very inspirational. And you could see it in their books. You could see it in most of their books. Short, powerful, beautiful, electrifying, uplifting spiritual insights. When you look at Alter Rebbe's books, it's a completely different brand. First of all, he writes a Tanya. Tanya is the code of Hasidic law, like the Shulchan Aruch. What does Hasidus believe in? What's our perspective? Why was the world created? What is Torah? What is mitzvahs? What is Yiddishkeit? What's the destiny of the Jewish people? What's the purpose of creation? How do we understand God? What is our connection to God? How do we cultivate serenity in life? What is our purpose as individuals, as part of the Jewish people? What's the trajectory of the universe? Why is there evil in the universe? How do we deal with suffering? How do we deal with anxiety? An encyclopedic, comprehensive code. What is Chassidus? That was a Tanya, but also all of his discourses took the ideas of the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid and they contextualized it within the totality of Jewish wisdom over history. So he created really a system of thought. That's why he called it Chachma Bina Das. He also synthesized the rational and mystical streams of Judaism into a unified, comprehensive program for life. That was something very unique. He wrote a Shulchan Aruch, a code of Jewish law, and he also wrote a Tanya. He wrote many mystical books, and he tried to synthesize the two streams of Judaism, which is philosophy and rationality and mysticism. He tried to synthesize the Guide of the Perplexed of Maimonides, which is philosophy, the writings of the Arizal and the Zohar, which is pure mysticism, and practical law of the Talmud and the Shulchan Aruch into a unified program. And one of the reasons he explained, he wanted that this should not just be based on the inspiration of an individual person. It should become a system that's studied and comprehended and analyzed and dissected. And he was something. I mean, his brilliance is exceptional. And as a result of that, he felt that the Hasidic teachings could become really a program for life. It could become something that you can appreciate and internalize and live with emotionally and on a daily basis. So that was, I would say, his unique contribution. He has had tremendous success in his generation, his successful generations. Now, you ask a wonderful question about Chabad today and Chabad then. All the seeds of Chabad today were all planted by the Baal Tanya, by the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe speaks about our role in fixing the whole world, our responsibility to all of the Jewish people, the need not to go into a segregation, but to take responsibility for God's world, to transform the landscape of planet Earth. All the seeds of Chabad today are all planted by the Baal Tanya. However, the historical circumstances of post-Holocaust Jewry, the dispersion of the Jewish people throughout the whole world, the secularization of most of the Jewish people, guided the last leaders of Chabad, particularly the most recent Lubavitcher Rebbe, to the unique role that Chabad plays today in the Jewish world. But the conceptual, existential, philosophical, and social ideas of Chabad are all based in the teachings of the Baal Tanya. All of them.